edition of the which is the Los Angeles Dodgers,
Hey,
your 2020 World Series champions. So the the Dodgers won 4 games to 2 over the Tampa Bay Rays, which I'm personally very excited about. How about you guys?
Yeah.
as far as me, I didn't really tune in as much as I would have liked to this World Series, but I thought that it was really interesting, the analytical storyline that came out that everybody has been talking about recently, and I thought it was really telling of cycles that happen in sports. I used to be an editor with Slam Magazine, and my brother is a college basketball coach, so I can remember these different cycles of when analytics originally came into the picture. My brother is still a big-time believer in analytics and stuff, and I can tell you that at least, when I'm listening to some of the hockey podcasts and stuff out there, I'm hearing these GMs, they're all talking about the human element coming back. And we're hearing more about that and not less about analytics necessarily, but I am hearing that some of the guys who were married to analytics are maybe moving away from it. So it was funny to see it play out with the Dodgers here in the World Series.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Dodgers definitely, obviously, with you go back to the human element you brought up, and they just had studs on that team, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
just a bunch of studs that they just outworked and outproduced the Rays, and that was the case there. And I think that you see kind of where the analytics failed, and we'll get into that here in a little
Right.
bit. But
Yeah.
it definitely failed the Rays there in that last game 6 there. I think that the Dodgers, I said it last week, the Dodgers were just too good for this Rays team. And the Rays are going to be good for a few years here coming up, and they have a good window. We'll see kind of where they produce. But I really do think that this Dodgers team is for real, obviously, with another championship. They're young. They're a bunch of great core guys in Kershaw. Well, Kershaw's a little older now, but with Mookie and Justin Turner and a few other guys, Max Muncy, we get into those guys. So
Yeah.
that team's a great team. They're going to be around for a long time.
Well, we'll talk about the World Series MVP, which is Corey Seager. Any disputes on that? Shortstops for the Dodgers.
It was the statistical. He was definitely the statistical MVP for sure. I don't think he was the morale MVP. I don't think he brought the same energy when they get bats, pitching, things like that, where you might have picked a guy like Kershaw, Mookie, Justin Turner, guys that the lights shine a little brighter when they come out. And I think that, but statistically, I think Corey Seager was the logical choice for MVP.
Honestly, I think it was a great choice. I think it's refreshing to have like somebody who should have actually won it instead of having the big names win it. I mean, Kershaw very deserving, Mookie Betts very deserving, but you have the one guy who is not the biggest name and just prevails and gets the award. Like how many times do you see these championships get won and then the star players are the ones that end up getting the MVP kind of just by default, and not really like.
Yeah, but that's what the star players get paid for.
Yeah,
they get
but-
paid to bring home MVPs.
Yeah,
That's
but
what
just
they're
not. Yeah, but just not having them like winning it outright when there's somebody else who's more.
And I
deserving
also
of
think
it.
you put Corey Seager on any other team, and he's a star on that team. I
Yeah.
think that with this Dodgers team being as good
Very
as they
stacked.
are,
A lot of
yeah,
talent
I
on
mean,
there.
being exactly having so many names
Every
on that
position.
team, exactly, 100% at every position, every single bit of the season was. And Corey Seager was hurt last season and missed it, but before that, he was the big name on that team. Before Mookie came in, before Max Muncy, and him, it was Corey Seager and Justin Turner. Those were the two big guys in the Dodgers organization. And Corey Seager obviously shined a lot in the World Series. It's going to be nice when he goes home for Thanksgiving, gets to tell his brother that he won a World Series and a World Series MVP, and he's sitting up in, I think,
Bragging
up in
rights there,
Seattle,
yeah,
right?
okay.
And they're not doing much of anything up there. So it's going to be nice when he goes home for Thanksgiving for sure.
Yeah, and then the fact that Seager is actually a draft pick of the Dodgers. He was the first round draft pick in 2012, not one of these big money free agents that they reeled in. So as far as like the big money Dodgers and spending all these billions of dollars, and then David Price is on the team. He didn't even play. So that's a lot of millions of dollars that wasn't used, but you got the one homegrown guy, taking it home, won the NLCS MVP and the World Series MVP. So, way to go for him.
Can we just take a second about Clayton Kershaw?
Yes.
How good Clayton Kershaw was in this World Series.
Yes, he finally arrived.
Exactly, and it's been a long time coming for him, and how good of a player, and he finally gets that ring. And is that it for Clayton Kershaw? Does he call it a career with the back issues, or does he keep going? He has another year left on his contract. Does he give it another run and try to go for back-to-back, or you think that he calls it?
I say he does.
Yeah?
I say he does. I mean, he just got into the swing of things of being dominant in the playoffs.
Like, when I did watch almost 3 full games of the World Series. I can't say I didn't watch it all. Listen, I think when you win one, you're going to find out in the next couple of weeks if he's coming back. I think you're going to find out how hurt he was. You know what I mean? Like you're going to find out are these issues really lingering long enough that he might have to shut it down. Listen, you win a championship. I don't think you necessarily have to come back at this point. You got to motivate yourself too. I mean, you want to talk about like getting up to win again after you've already won. I think that's a problem for a lot of professional athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have some stats here for you on Kershaw. So Kershaw, his career before this World Series, 2014 NL MVP, 3-time Cy Young winner, 8-time All-Star, won the pitching Triple Crown in 2011, a 2011 Gold Glove, has a no-hitter to his name, 2.43 career ERA, 2,500 strikeouts, most strikeouts in postseason history, and now he's a World Series champion. So he adds that World Series ring to an already Hall of Fame career. I think you're right. I think why put your body through another 162-game season, most likely, starting in March again, and instead just go out on top like most guys want to do and walk away. He made millions and millions of dollars throughout his whole career, and he's a first ballot Hall of Famer for sure. And I think that for him, it's more of all right, this team is still good. This team's still ready to go. Maybe I can have a limited role in coming back. He doesn't have to be the ace in that organization anymore. He doesn't have to carry the team anymore. He can be the third or fourth guy in the rotation and then come home with a ring. But I don't think he really needs to.
I think with any athlete, it depends on what role they're being asked to play, if they're mentally able to play that role, and if they want to take what the organization wants to pay them to do it. You know what I mean? Like, who got more bang for their buck the last 2 years in the St. Louis Blues and the Tampa Bay Lightning out of Pat Maroon? You know what I mean? the guy basically made the league minimum the last 2 years, and he won back-to-back Stanley Cups. It's really amazing sometimes when you have somebody that motivated and in that position. I don't know if his body is ready to make a Pat Maroon run, and Pat's not in great shape either. But, I mean, I don't know if he's ready to make another run to the World Series and everything like that with all he's done. Your back is tough. It could freeze up on you. And you know what it is, too? I think some of these athletes, I'm not an expert, but I think some of these athletes should retire after they win. Because I think, isn't it better just to go out on top? Like, you just leave on top. A lot of these guys drag through their careers after that for a while. I mean, they're picking up money. They got to be bought out. They have to be sent to the minors sometimes for these crazy contractual situations. I say hang it up. There's plenty of money for that guy to make still if he wants to do anything. He's a World Series champion now. There's plenty of avenues for him.
So the one factor here that supersedes a lot of the logic behind what you gentlemen are saying is the actual passion that they have for the game, which is hard to turn off. So it's a personality, it's a human nature thing where somebody just wants to. That's why you have like beer leaguers playing until they're like 50, you know, like it's just it defies logic.
70,
and it's probably even
young.
70, so it's not always, you know, like the logistical, you know, like maybe he should hang him up and things. It's the, you know, what does he want to do? Like, does he want to keep playing? And that's why a lot of players play past the times that they probably should have hung it up, because they still have that fire, that rhythm, that, you know, that desire.
What's his contract situation?
He's got a year left on his deal. He's got 1 year left on his deal. I think that's why I said I think he can. He doesn't need to by any means, but I think he probably will. Like I said, he doesn't have to be the number one guy anymore in LA. He can be the third or fourth guy in the rotation and still make a good run at it.
Everybody likes their farewell tour these days too, so he's gonna come back.
I don't think he's gonna get a farewell tour like Mariano got or like like Big Poppy got, but I think that he'll definitely have something in a bunch of places, but he'll definitely be able to play that last year of his contract
People
out
will
if he
tip his
decides to
cap
come
him,
back. Yeah, for
he's a
sure.
good player.
On that stacked roster, it wouldn't be exactly risky for him to come back. You
No,
know?
I mean, they've gone to the World Series, the last 4 years? Every year for the last 4 years. What's another one for him? So to make a
100%.
deep run in October.
Yeah.
Especially this year might be a godsend for him. A shortened season. He didn't have to pitch all that much during the regular season. He didn't pitch quite as much as he would in a regular 162
And that's something we didn't
schedule.
mention at all, too. I mean, look at all these guys are going to come back. Joe Thornton just signed to come back in Toronto. He's playing right now in Davos. You know, I think that this is going to put look, Patty Marlowe's going to he's going to come back. And there's probably some other guys out there who get signed before the end of the season that were older, but especially in the NHL, they'll come back. Maybe Ron Hainsey. I mean, I think he's still hanging around out there, and somebody will sign him for one more season. He's still got a little left. So
Agreed. So as we talk about, we stress the fact that we have new World Series champion, and you know they've all won the championship. But how do you rate the championship that they've just won? You know, like they played a 60-game season. The normal is 162. What do you guys think this is like an actual full like non-asterisk kind of championship, or do you think there's like a little left to be desired there?
I don't think there's an asterisk on any of these championships that have been won throughout this whole thing. You still have to beat the teams to play. You can argue that this baseball championship was tougher because of the expanded playoff. And in my opinion, they still had to go. They still had to play all these teams. You didn't get to do it in L.A., which we all know that Dodger Stadium is a home field advantage. There's no question about that. They've won it in Texas, of all places, right? And kind of an interesting tidbit there with the whole Astros scenario, and they won it in Texas after that. Granted, it was in Dallas, but I think that they still had to beat good teams to win the championship, right? And it was this, you could say the same thing about the Stanley Cup. You could say the same thing about the NBA. I think that these people trying to say that these don't count doesn't make sense. I think you still had to be there at the end of the year. You still, and arguably, especially baseball, 162 games, there's a lot of room for error. You have a lot of room to mess up and go through those streaks and go through those peaks and valleys in a regular season. You didn't get that this year. You went on a 10-game skid, you're out, right? And you really didn't have that. And we saw that, and that's how the Marlins ended up making their run, is they kind of just got hot at the right time, and that they just rode that, right? So the Dodgers still had to beat good teams. The Rays still had to go through good teams like the Yankees. I'll keep poking that one home all day long. But no, there's no asterisk on that season, in my opinion.
All right, what do you think, Matt?
You know, I think people are going to talk about these for a long time, and probably not for a very good reason. I mean, do people talk about the first New Jersey Devils Stanley Cup like this? You know what I mean? There was a shortened season. Nobody ever thinks about it. Nobody says, well, they won that first one, and there was only so many. And
Well,
then,
Ranger fans do.
I guess. And then
Well, it's the same thing. We don't talk about the Blackhawks when they won on the shortened season.
and that was a
right, in
short season
2013,
recently.
so.
Nobody ever brings that up. And you got to remember, too, it's not like baseball. I mean, if you're going to make an argument, right, I think it would probably be about baseball. If you had to pick one of the three of them, that said it wasn't as valid. Or, I mean, the NHL played an awful amount of games, awful lot of games.
Yeah.
The NBA, I think they finished the season.
Modified version, but yeah.
Modified
it was close to it,
version.
Yeah, they
finishing
did.
the
They finished it
season.
in the bubble, kind
Yeah.
of.
They finished
and
it in
then
the
went through
bubble.
their playoffs.
And then went to the playoffs. So,
Yeah, I think if you have to, I 100%
I
agree
mean,
with you. If you
baseball
have to
is
make an
a
argument.
marathon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It
I
is a
think that's one of the
marathon.
things that goes into it for sure. I
Yeah.
just don't think that you can really count. I mean, you can't say.
No, you can't discredit. These are
Yeah,
the circumstances that
exactly.
were available to be
And
played.
it's not the player's fault that Rob
No.
Manfred couldn't get his act together and have a real season.
He was the
I mean,
last
he
one.
dragged his feet through the whole
Yeah.
thing. And you know, it just didn't work out that way. And for the Dodgers, this is 33 years in the making for them. They hadn't won a world championship in 33 years. This is a team that, like I said, they just added a few more pieces in the offseason, a la Mookie Betts. And now become a championship team, and they've been knocking on the door for the last few years, especially, I mean, going as far back as 2013, they've been knocking on the door in the NLCS, and
Right.
they just finally get it done. So you can't take that away from those guys for
No.
sure.
I think I'm most disappointed personally from my own personal opinion. I think I'm most disappointed that the COVID situation has now, obviously it's not going to just go away, but I'm mostly disappointed that if you look at the calendar, we've spanned a good chunk of a calendar year here, and we really don't have a clear path to normalcy from leadership. And I think baseball got caught up in it. I think the NHL did a fantastic job. Listen, I'm sure things will come out eventually, little things, but overall, I think they did a really good job.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, they were in the two most, best situation was to get everybody to Canada, especially Edmonton, where they finished the whole thing.
Yep.
So I'm a little more disappointed from whatever leadership, maybe it's national leadership, that this situation is kind of stretched from not even the end of one sports season, now into the beginning of another.
Yeah.
And I think that'll resonate with some people, especially in the coming days.
Yeah, I think as far as like unprecedented, we've talked about it on the show. Like this is very unprecedented times, and
100%.
what a lot of the sports have done, they kind of did their own thing, but it was the NBA and the NHL that figured it out. Like they knew how to beat the system as far as like COVID goes, and then baseball kind of like they dragged their feet with it a little bit, and now football is going through it with the traveling factor. Like the bubble's where it's at.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just look at it, and not to get into it much deeper, because there's better things in actual sports to talk about, but just the logistics of some of these things, baseball rosters, football rosters, there's too many moving parts to bubble everybody, right? In hockey, you have a 20-man roster and probably, we'll call it 15 to 20 staffers, right? That would go into the bubble realistically. Basketball is even less. You have a 12-man roster, and you have maybe 5 or 6 coaches and maybe 5 or 6 more staff. So they're easier to bubble, and that they showed the bubbles work. Football has gone or working on trying to figure that out. I just think with a 53-man roster, you have 15 coaches alone, and then let alone staffers, trainers, doctors. It's just too much for those guys, and I think that baseball, I was glad to see baseball be able to get it done. And obviously we can go back and talk about hockey and basketball doing it right and doing it 100%, finishing the season the right way. But I think that you can't really, just to circle everything back full circle, you can't put an asterisk on any of this stuff.
No, very tough. The circumstances were as they were, and these are the results that we have of trying to create a playoff, based on that. I'm not 100% sure. I think in the very early days of the Stanley Cup, I think the Stanley Cup was canceled because of the Spanish flu or something like that.
Something like
The
that.
year
Yeah,
it
that's a
was.
long, long time ago.
So it's one of those things where it's like this has happened in history,
Sure.
and they were able to complete the season. All of the leagues were basically. I can't think of the ones that. Well, I mean, obviously the minor leagues all called it a year, but I think Canadian football is that like the only one that's not going to play at all next year in this coming season. I think.
Yeah, I haven't heard. I haven't done all the research.
Only North American
yeah.
League.
So I haven't
think,
seen. So
not
I don't
going
want
to
talk
play.
on that yet.
Yeah.
Well, they take minor league baseball. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
This is exactly what big baseball wanted to happen to minor league baseball, but that's a whole other podcast.
Totally.
Exactly what they wanted to happen.
All right. So we're gonna get back to the analytical point of view. So in Game 6, there was the starter for the Rays, Snell, ended up getting lifted after 73 pitches, and I think it was the 7th inning, sixth inning. So as far as the analytics goes, what do we think about that move?
The 3 batters he was supposed to face were 0-6 in the game. 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts nonetheless. And for Kevin Cash to walk out there and pull his ace, and then it gave the Dodgers the championship. There's no question about it. It swung the momentum completely away from them.
I think I caught a stat today that said the guy who, again, I didn't follow as closely as you guys did, but I think the stat said that the guy who went in had given up a run in the last 6 games.
Yeah.
One run in the last 6 games. I was like, wow. You know, it's to me, that's all the analytics I needed to hear, not to bring that guy in the game.
And look, the
that's all I
Dodgers.
needed to hear.
Yeah, 100%. And
I don't even know the guy, but
the Rays bullpen had issues and question marks coming into the World Series to begin with. They had their closer Yarbrough, and then what, right? So you really, with as many questions as they had, and you can make the argument as all day long that you don't want Mookie Betts to see a pitcher 3 times. You don't want Mookie Betts to see a pitcher 1 time, but that's just the way it happened, right? And for Kevin Cash to walk out there and pull Snell in that situation, and the situation that he had, was just a wild move that, in my opinion, I don't think Kevin Cash will ever. It could cost him his job. It should cost him his job. He's been too good in Tampa for it to completely cost him his job, but this might be one of those notches where if they don't make it back to the playoffs and they don't come close to this type of season next year, he might be gone. Yeah. And it goes back. It's going to show in the long run, and it's going to take away the belief. If you're Blake Snell, do you want to play for this guy anymore? I mean, that's the next question. So
he's very opinionated too, because he was one of the ones that pretty much stood up and said that he didn't want to play this season because of the COVID factor. Yeah. He was like one of the big ones on Twitter. So it's not like he's shy. You know?
One of the things I heard on another podcast today actually was, you know, these pitch counts are they just seem kind of arbitrary in to some degree, and like one of the guys on the podcast, it was a Spit and Chickless podcast. One of the guys, RA, tried to look up the 1986 World Series, and they weren't even keeping.
No,
they weren't keeping pitch counts back then.
Yeah. Pitch count became a thing very recently when the analytics started to come into baseball, right?
I think that had a lot to do. You know, like, do you guys remember a few years ago now? Shows you how how well my finger's on the pulse of baseball. But remember a few years ago when the whole Matt Harvey thing happened, the pitch count thing? Yep. I was like, this is just his agent, and you know, he's married to this concept that the guy can only throw a certain amount of pitches. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, to me, that's where the overmanaging starts to come 100%. In. And you have to kind of look at what the guy's doing. And if he's hot, he's hot. You're basically, it's basically like you're driving on a long drive, and your car is running really smoothly, and it's running hot, and it's running well. And in the middle of it, you say, I'm going to pull over and start up this other car that I have 500 miles from where I started, and I'm going to try and get it to run hot as fast, you know, trying to get it to run hot at the same point that the original car was running at. It just makes no sense. It's an arbitrary thing to do to me. It seems like 73 pitches. The guy gets paid to do that.
Yeah, the over-managing, we've seen it pretty much for years.
And we
now
talked about it in our series preview a couple weeks ago. We mentioned that, and I actually said it was going to be Dave Roberts that was going to over-manage the series, and it turned out to be Kevin Cash, who normally doesn't do things like that. I mean, he started to kind of go to those analytics all year long, and that's kind of what brought them to where they are. But 73 pitches is just a wild number to pull Blake Snell. He's your ace. He's your go-to guy. In that situation, he's pitching a gem of a game at that point. And if you're the best starting pitchers in this league, go 90 to 110 pitches a night, and that, especially in the World Series, that's going to be his last appearance of the season. Yeah. Let him go until the tank runs out, or until he says I can't go, because he was mad when they took him out.
Yeah,
and
rightfully so.
Absolutely, he was mad. He wanted the ball in that situation, and who doesn't? The best pitchers, best anybody want the ball when the game's on the line, and he had it, and he was working, and he was running that Dodgers team into the ground to force a Game 7, and we would have seen Glasnow probably go in Game 7, but now we won't don't see that because Kevin Cash made a
Nah.
huge mistake.
I think as far as the analytics go, there's always going to be, if the decision works, then it's a great move. If the decision doesn't work, it was a crappy move, and it'll be second guessed forever, no matter
Yep.
what. If it logistically makes sense, doesn't make sense, at the end of the day, you just gotta do what you gotta go with what's worked for the season, and that's what
The thing
have
is this,
riding
right?
your ace.
The analytics are like the cell phone. So when analytics first came out, right, my brother was he was using the Synergy system that Mark Cuban had set up, and you would be able to, like, literally you could type in Jamal Crawford, like it was like so specific, going left
Yeah.
against a team in the Western Conference on games only like Monday through Friday or some crazy thing, right?
Yeah.
And it was like a cell phone in that, it started out very basic, right? You have a flat tire. I don't have my phone, but you have a flat tire, you call someone,
Yeah.
right? Now it does too much.
Right.
Yeah.
Now the phone just does too much.
Yeah.
And the analytics are the same way.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, right, I'll be 100% behind the curtain with you guys. I used to see my brother and these guys doing it a little bit too, and it just seemed crazy. They used to have all these analytics kids, these basketball geeks that they'd be in touch with, and they'd be like, "Hey, run this equation and run this stat and
Yeah.
look up what happened to every kid that was ranked 50 through 75 in the 8th grade in 2016, and you tell me where every guy is now, and you tell me what he's averaging." It just gets crazy because it goes further and further from winning and losing. I just think it gets further and further from winning and losing
And
games.
just
There's valuable stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Just to kind of close the point on this, nobody's going to remember him pulling him in like July of next year. It's going to be a moot point by then. And
I don't
they'll
know.
just
I
remember
think
the
something like
Dodgers.
that.
Well, Joe Buck will bring it up on Sunday Night Baseball, but that's about it,
Something
right?
like that,
Nobody
people are
remembers
gonna
second
remember.
Every time Blake Snell pitches next season, it'll get brought up.
Mets fans
But
remember
that'll be
Kenny
it.
Rogers forever. You know
Well,
what I mean?
I remember
Well,
when
you know.
Listen, Rays fans are not Mets fans. Let's be
No, right,
honest.
right, right.
And the Rays fans, whatever Rays fans are in Tampa,
You know,
will remember it. But that's about it.
I wanted to bring this up. We have been dumping a little bit on Tampa recently for this mistake or this gaffe. You know what? I'm glad Tampa made it to the World
Yep.
Series. I'll tell
Yeah,
you why.
they did good.
It's going to give the team a shot in the arm. They'll probably get the new stadium that they need. I think it's called the Channel Side. They want to build a
They've
new
been talking
stadium.
about that, and to be honest with you, I think the team will move before they get that stadium built.
I
We'll
don't know.
see what
The
happens.
city's growing very fast.
And I was a resident of Tampa Bay for 4 years, and the city's fantastic. The city's growing. If they get that stadium, it'd be awesome. But to travel to St. Pete to play inside baseball in a dome,
It's kind of tough.
it's the worst stadium in the league by far. The fans are 80% away team fans.
Right.
But the Rays are good. The Rays are going to be a good team for years to come, as long as ownership and management are willing to put in the money. It's going to be the same thing. We saw Cleveland was very good for a little while, and now they don't want to pay anybody. And you got guys down there like Blake Snell, like Tyler Glasnow, Randy Arozarena, who are really good. Randy Arozarena set a home run record for the postseason this year. Hit 10 home runs in the postseason, more than anybody else by, I think, 3 or 4 home runs. And it's just his contract's going to be up in a couple years. Someone's going to want him.
Right.
But it's going to be, and that's where the big names, the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Red Sox, that's where those big names come in, because those are the guys that they swipe these guys out from their rookie contracts, and then they become superstars somewhere else. And it's going to be, are the Rays going to be able to invest that money and be in there?
Listen, I actually think that this was going to be really good for the Rays. I'll tell you why. Because if you think about it, right, when the Florida Marlins came in and they won their early championship, and then if you remember, the Florida Panthers went to the finals. I think it was their first or second
And
year.
what happened after all of those?
Listen, it went bad, but here's the thing. What I was trying to say is I actually think if you're an owner of a team, those early ones are good. But it would have been nice if it kind of happened now, right? You've been around 20 years, you built up a fan base, and now you do it, because probably when those teams launched, it was all away fans when both of those teams launched in Florida. It still is all away fans because they haven't been good since. I mean, they both stink, and I love going to Panthers games. I love going to Marlins games, but they haven't been, they haven't been as competitive. And, look, I think that Tampa's in a better position because they got to the finals now. And listen, 2 years ago, I actually met these crazy guys in Boston one night, and they were telling me all about how all the Rays needed to do was get into this one part of town because that's where it was growing so much. Listen, that's the biggest thing is where these stadiums are getting built in every sport. They're not necessarily helping the teams. I mean, a lot of people are so mad that they use public money, but the truth is that was probably an empty parking lot with the exception of the Barclays Center. They're building the new Islanders arena in the parking lot of a racetrack or whatever that nobody goes to. So I think it's all good.
And congratulations to the Tampa Bay Rays for doing their thing. And nothing builds more than winning. So that definitely
they'll be around.
Definitely
They'll be
them out
around
for the
and they'll
future.
be back. Hopefully to the World Series. We'll see. We'll see how it goes for them.
All right, so we're gonna switch gears now. We're gonna focus on Matt Caputo and the Mustache Classic. So can you tell us?
Yeah, so the Mustache Classic is something that we started last year in 2019. It was all, it was kind of a crazy little story. Wade, who's kind of off camera here, and I happened to take a little ride up to Danbury, Connecticut one day in August of 2019, and we wanted to go to West Coast Sports. It's a great hockey store. If you ever go up that way and you're in the mode for hockey gear, that's the place to go in that area. So I took Wade to Westco, and then we went to TK's, my man TK in Danbury, best wings around, 78 flavors of wings. I took him to TK's, and then we went down to Danbury Arena where I was friendly with some of the people that are part of the new ownership group that took over Danbury Arena. So we got to walk around the facility. We saw some of the stuff that they were doing. They are transforming. They are transforming this place. They're putting probably close to $1 million into Danbury Arena. It's going to be like a magical place to go. There's going to be an arcade. There's going to be an axe-throwing bar. There's going to be, there's a brand new concession stand in the lobby area. So what we did was we sat down at a brewery up there, Charter Oak Brewery, and we said, wouldn't this be great to bring our beer guys up here for like we wanted to replicate like the all-star weekend experience. Like we crammed it into one day. But really, we had a bunch of guys converge. Last year we had about 40 people in the group between players and volunteers, 40, 50 people. But we all converged on Danbury, and we did everything that Wade and I did that first day. We ate wings, we played hockey, we went to the brewery, and at night we checked out the Danbury Hat Tricks professional hockey team. It's a low-level professional hockey, entry-level professional hockey team in Danbury. Listen, Danbury it's the hockey town of the greater New York City area. There's a professional hockey team there dating back to like 2005. I don't want to say a lot about that, but if anybody remembers the Danbury Trashers, they were the team that started it all. You can Google them. There's a lot about them, and forthcoming you're going to hear probably some more about them. Early next year, there's going to be a little bit of a revival of sorts. I'm not allowed to say much more than that, but there's going to be a cool revival that I think anybody who ever heard of Danbury hockey or ever even heard of the United Hockey League and the Danbury Trashers and what their story was about, there's going to be a nice treat at the top of next year, I think. So I always wanted to do something with the Movember Foundation, with hockey, with a few different things. I've been involved in the past. I've been involved trying to raise money on my own.
Just for everyone, what is the Movember Foundation? What do they support?
Yes, so Movember is an organization that was originally started in Australia. It moved across, it spread, across really the world. and it's an organization dedicated to fighting men's cancer and suicide prevention. They pay for a lot. They raise money that ultimately gets funneled to all of these different services. Cancer screenings for men, veterans. You're paying for veterans to see different counselors and analysts. You're also paying for the average person too. And this is a worldwide thing, and they support a lot of different things. So a couple of years ago, I had a good friend of mine. It was a terrible thing. He took his own life. He was a fantastic guy. A lot of people from Queens knew him from the music scene. He wasn't a hockey fan per se, but he was always involved with hockey, with wrestling. He was involved in the underground wrestling scene with a lot of different things. His name was Richard Parker. He had a concert series called Taking Back Queens. And I initially wanted to do something to keep his memory alive. I wanted to do something that I was passionate about, the way he did things that he was passionate about. I started with an Instagram account, and then the perfect storm kind of happened. You know, I got back playing hockey again. I had kind of taken like a year off, and I wandered back in the rink in maybe late 2018 or early 2019, just having taken kind of like a year off. And I got back out there. I met a bunch of different dudes. Guys started asking me to play on teams and go on trips to Atlantic City and Pennsylvania and New Jersey and play in road games and stuff. So listen, it's just been a lot of fun, and I wanted to put it together. I wanted to, there's a lot of leadership, and there's a lot of, there's a lot of positive masculinity involved in beer leagues, and involved in, and even the female players. There's a lot of camaraderie and sportsmanship when we're on mixed teams like that. So I wanted to do something that benefited Movember, but we had some guys. We had some guys come up. They were never part of a tournament. They were never part of an event like that. We also had guys come up that had played professional hockey, came out of nowhere to say, hey. Billy McCreary, who's the coach of the Danbury Hat-Tricks new junior team, and he is the GM of the professional team. His dad played, and he's got a legacy of NHL blood in his family. He's like a founding member. He got involved. A lot of great people got involved. Last year, another guy by the name of Mustache Batista. He's this great kid. He used to play inline hockey, but he's a world champion in the mustache competitions, and he is an American Ninja Warrior, multiple-time finalist, and he'll be back again reffing. This year we have Doug Smith from Goon. He's going to be coming down to play, and he'll get out there on the ice with us. It's a fantastic thing. A great guy from Long Island, Jack Gregg, who played pro. This guy's going to be a professional coach someday, or a high-level junior coach, I'm sure. Just a lot of people got involved. We got players from all over the world. As you know, Charlie, he's from Mexico. He plays with the Mexican national team. We got guys from England. We got guys that are on active duty in the military. We have guys that are active duty in the police department, the fire department. So, you know what it is? We got people that come from artistic backgrounds also in there, and we come from business backgrounds, lawyers, retired guys. I mean, it's just, I started this because I thought it would be a nice way to hang out with my friends and to be honest, drink some beers and eat some wings. And the next thing you know, to be 100% honest with you guys, I'm having people come to me and tell me that, I'm glad you're doing this. I struggle with wanting to live sometimes, and it's nice to, literally, a couple of people. It kind of been like, I struggled with this, or some guys came and said, I had cancer. I don't want everybody to know, but I'm so glad you're doing this. You know what I mean? And it sounds like a small thing, and then and when you try and explain that we're doing a tournament that raises money for Movember, we're working on getting to $10,000 right now. It's not even November 1st, and we've already almost doubled the money that we made last year.
You talk about people that don't like talking about it, and people coming up and saying things like that, and I think cancer is something that's affected everybody
100%.
on the planet one way or the other, and To be able to bring, and the NHL does a great job with their Hockey Fights Cancer movement and things like that, and I think that more people like yourself need to do more in the community, and it's something that we love to see, especially in our area where we live, and to be able to bring it. That Danbury rink is beautiful.
It's
I've
great.
been up there.
Yeah, it's
They're
great.
pouring a lot of money into that rink, and it really is showing. It really is a great opportunity for players who may not go up there to be able to go up and help a great cause. And like you said, hang out with other hockey players, drink some beer, eat some
100%.
good wings and some good food, some good chat, things like that, and just have a great time right around the sport of hockey and be able to raise money for a good cause. The one question I have, the first question I have is this is it you mentioned it's a tournament, or is it like a fundraising game where kind of everybody comes together?
So last year we had like a fundraising game, an all-star game. It was kind of just one game. Guys, I was just dipping my feet. First of all, I'd never done any tournaments or anything like that before in my life. I was just dipping my foot into the water with it. We had a tremendous response. So many people felt left out. It was really hard to hear after a while, because I wanted to include everybody. I mean, people were calling me like the night before the event asking if there was some way they could play, and it was like, we ordered the jerseys way in advance. I got to be honest with you. The reason we're able to do it from a one-off game to a tournament, I'll be honest with you guys, if it wasn't for Champion Elevator, my sponsor, forget it. It brings me to tears. We wouldn't be able to do this. These guys, forget about it. Like, we came with a very modest offer the first year of what we needed, and they went so far above and beyond what they could have done. And this year, coming in, at almost $10,000 to help us do the event, actually. So I'm proud to say that the $8,500 that Champion Elevator gave us to do the event, the guys who are raising money on Movember, we've already gone over that. And we are the number one team leader on the NHL Hockey Fights Cancer Challenge on Movember's website. We're ahead of people take pride in being a part of. You know what I mean? I really, they honored me last year with Movember by allowing me to go up and ring the opening bell with NASDAQ with a bunch of different guys. And that was all that was amazing. That was one of the greatest days of my life. And
Totally.
just to be up there, but we were up there with a bunch of guys. I'll tell you a real quick story. You got to get there at like 5 in the morning to ring the NASDAQ. And, I just kind of do marketing and real estate related stuff. And I get in there, and there's all these big time finance guys, and they got nice suits on, and they got weaker mustaches than me, but they got nice suits on and stuff. And I'll be honest with you, our little event, we only raised like close to $7,000 last year. And at the time, the day I went to go do the NASDAQ thing, we only had like $1,000 up there as a team. All the money came towards the end, but it was just amazing, because these guys, one guy tells you, yeah, we raised $150,000. We raised $200,000. But, and listen, I respect anybody who can raise that amount of money. It is tough, man. It is tough to raise money. I mean, I'm trying to sell stuff, and we can't even get any. We're trying to sell trinkets and pucks and stuff. I brought you a puck, Al. So this is for you. From the Mustard Classic, so you can have an official game puck. That's from Howie's. You got that, and the other side says Champion Elevator. So we got that here today for you. But you know what it is? Awesome. It's these guys raised so much money, and I went home that day, and I kind of felt a little down. I'll be honest with you, because I was like, wow, these guys raising $200,000, whatever, $150,000. And then, you know what, like over the next couple of weeks, because the event was the next day, the response I got from the guys was worth $1 million. Forget it, $200,000.
Yeah, it's interesting, because you really see, especially in the hockey community, I know not many people watching are as big a hockey fans probably as we are and play the sport like we do, but it's a very small community, but it's the biggest community, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And that may not make sense to a lot of people, but
no, it is.
the response you get, especially when it comes to health and safety and things like that, and mental health has been a kind of a stigma. People don't like talking about
Sure.
it, and it's kind of becoming the forefront of one of the things that we're trying to take care of in our game, especially with we talk about head injuries and the long-term effects of head injuries in sports. We kind of get into that, but the fact that you can put together this and without any prior experience putting events together, managing events, tournaments, um, speaks to the kind of person you are. It's awesome. I love to see it. I'd love to get involved for sure. I'd
Oh,
love
that'd
to
be great.
play.
Yeah, come down next year.
I try to get this guy to come play too. We'll see how it goes. But give us the dates. I know you mentioned it's in Danbury.
Yeah, so it's
at the Danbury Ice Arena.
Yeah, I
right?
actually
So-
wanted to address that a little bit. So it'll be November 21st in Danbury. But the reason, I'll be honest with you guys, might as well say it on broadcast because I've already said it on Facebook and all these other places. The reason we're doing it again, even with the challenges that are being presented out there, is because I was very impressed with the system and the safety precautions that are in place at Danbury Arena right now. We had a tournament there, I believe it was, I want to say it was August. And listen, it's a fortress. It's hard to get in.
Yep.
It's a big building. We've taken into account things within our own game that we're hoping will speed the process up. So I'm hoping that nobody's really going to be in the building much longer than they would be during a normal kind of skate that you have during a regular week. So it's going to be a little, the games will be a little condensed. But everything else has been accounted for. We have PPE. You know, we're going to have a temperature or thermometer gun, I guess you call it. All that type of thing taken into account. So my whole thing is we're following the protocol of Danbury Arena, but we also have our own smaller protocol in place that involves PPE, that involves us taking temperatures, that involves us reinforcing that guy to properly social distance and to take that into account. So it's one of the things that we want so many people to be involved. There's no other way but to follow these protocols right now in everything that we're doing. So I understand people are tired of it. I'll be 100% honest with you. I'm tired of some of it, but the truth is, these are the protocols in place, and I have to go along with them. No matter who disagrees or agrees or who tries to politicize it, you have to go along with what they're telling you in the public.
Yep.
In the public.
Absolutely.
So, you have a question?
I just want to say that nothing brings people together like hockey, and it's a beautiful thing that you're doing. So thank you very much for sharing all those wonderful
Yeah,
stories and
appreciate that.
all the efforts. Anybody who organizes, anybody who organizes anything knows how big it is. So to organize something at the magnitude that you're accomplishing right now is nothing short than amazing.
No,
Thank you so much
it's
for that.
great, you know, and I just wanted to say that, you know, the spirit of the whole thing in 10 seconds is that, you know, we saw a lot of things last year, and a lot of guys are coming to us with issues this year. We had guys that dealt with sobriety issues. We had guys that dealt with cancer. We had a 60-some-odd-year-old guy a goalie, play 2 shutout periods to win the game. He's a cancer patient.
Wow.
Oof.
And, you know, we had other guys that have come to me about mental health and suicide things. Like I said, we had guys that deal with substance abuse things, sober guys. And I can only tell you that, you know, it's a time, especially for men. You're on a hockey team. You know, you have a friend. You know what I mean? And it's that sense of community that really you got to support the next guy right now as often as you can. You know, we're in a fragile time, and I think that you have to make sure the guy next to you knows that you're there to help.
Absolutely.
Luckily, we have that now, and there's not the macho kind of, you know, play through injury, and there's not the, you know, I can't talk about this because then I'm not gonna be like a real man's man. You know, like those kind of things. Those are starting to break down, so
Yeah.
it's awesome.
It's
Yeah,
great. You know, and
fantastic.
we had people come really from the beginning and even volunteer. Chris Spinelli from Super Rough everything the last 2 years. He's done everything I couldn't do, and he should be here being interviewed today just as much as I should. So I want to make sure I shouted him out too, because it's a lot of people that did a lot of good work.
It's all
on
about
this.
the team. That's
Absolutely, definitely. Where can people find out more information if they need to find out?
You can go to @MustacheClassic on Instagram. We also have the Mustache Classic Hockey Facebook page. If you want to give even $10, if you're passionate about cancer, you're passionate about adult recreational hockey, I think that's the community we represent. Just find our team. It's the Mustache Classic team on Movember.com. You could give $5. You could give $4, I think. You might not be able to give 4. I think 7's the minimum, but hey, we'll take $7.
That's cool.
Any little bit helps when it comes to cancer and mental health and men's health. So, guys, we encourage you guys to donate. Go out, find them on Facebook. Definitely be a part of this. And
Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram, everything
Yeah.
else for these guys. And thanks for coming. Thanks for showing it.
Movember.
Movember with an M.
Movember.
M-O-V-E-M.
Movember.
Yep. So these guys are doing a great thing for not only the tri-state area, I think, but nationally and around the world. Probably it's going to have some effect, probably as far as around the world. So we thank you for coming in and sharing that with us.
I want to thank you guys. You know, we don't get invited on a lot of shows to talk about this, and I just think it's really important. You know, we're really not, other than the pucks and stuff like that I'm trying to sell. We're going to be selling Doug Smith from Goons jersey. We're going to be raffling that off soon. We're not selling anything. You know, that's the one thing that I try and tell people. It's like, you know, there's money that occurs out of kind of happenstance dealing with some of the sponsors and stuff. We're not doing this for money. You know, we're doing this to help people. We're not really charging anything. And remember, you can donate to our event and be a sponsor of our event. But if you just want to support Movember through us, that's the way to do it. Go to Movember.com, find our team. You can donate however little you want, or however much, I guess. But.
Fantastic. So, we have a couple minutes left on our show for today, and we're gonna get into college football for a little bit. What do you got here? We got about 4 minutes.
Yeah, we'll run through some of these real quick. Over the last weekend, we had the Big Ten open up their season and abruptly end someone's season last weekend.
Damn.
Wisconsin came out. They actually were the first game of the weekend last weekend. They opened the season up against Illinois. Put a hurting on the Fighting Illini in Wisconsin, and actually looked good. They looked like contenders, like they should have been. And not far long after that game, their quarterback tested positive, and their season is pretty much done. They had an outbreak on the season. The game was canceled this weekend against Nebraska.
Jeez.
And that's going to pretty much end their season. The Big Ten did not leave any wiggle room for rescheduling games. They had an 8-week season. So they're pretty much done. Biggest upset of the weekend, Penn State losing in overtime last weekend, and just did not look good. They did not, and they just had a bad weekend, and it was actually a very similar ending to the end of the Falcons-Lions game last weekend, where Penn State scored and they probably didn't want to, and they walked in and then tied the game and lost in overtime. So and this weekend they got a big test. They got Ohio State coming to town, who is the big and bad Ohio State Buckeyes, coming into town, into Happy Valley. They're not going to have their fans in Happy Valley, which is the big whiteout, big atmosphere normally in that scenario, but they're not going to have them to be able to affect that crowd. This is normally a very big marquee matchup. In my opinion, I think Ohio State's a 12-point favorite coming into the game. I think they cover that easily. Ohio State looks really good right now, and they're just going to, as long as everybody can stay healthy and they can make it through 8 games, they're going to be a threat for that national championship game for sure.
Buckeye.
Yep.
Buckeyes.
All right.
We'll right through it. We'll move right along real quick just to kind of keep going. Michigan State, big rivalry this weekend. Michigan looked good last week against Minnesota. They're a 24.5-point favorite coming in. I think it's going to be a close game. They always play each other close. The game is in Michigan, I believe. I don't like either of these two teams personally. I think that Michigan is always overrated coming into the season with Jim Harbaugh.
That's because of the helmets, because they have such kick-ass helmets.
I think it's the tradition of Michigan, right? And the legacy that is Michigan football. And Michigan State is not good, but I think Michigan, they always wake up for these rivalry games. Michigan State doesn't have a ton of big rivalries. Michigan is that rivalry, and this is going to be a big game for them, and I think it'll be a lot closer than what the experts say, and giving 24.5 points, that's for sure. I mean, moving through a couple other matchups outside the Big Ten, number 1 Clemson's going up against BC. That's a formality at this point. Clemson's just going to continue to roll over them. Unless they look ahead next week, they got Notre Dame on the schedule for next weekend, and that's going to be the biggest matchup of Clemson's season. You got UGA's going to Kentucky. Kentucky's been very up and down this year, being big winners, big losers. They find ways to win games that they don't normally win. UGA's really good, so I think UGA's fine. Florida's coming off their COVID outbreak. They had a game postponed or canceled last weekend. They're going to Missouri this weekend. Missouri's the same way. Good team, coming up and down, but I think Florida kind of just continues to roll through their season unless they were really affected by their outbreak last weekend. Other than that, guys, I think business as usual for college football.
Okay, so just national championship, who do you have?
Oh, boy. National championship prediction now. It's hard for me not to say Clemson.
Clemson?
I don't like them. I'm not a Clemson fan. I'm a Florida State fan.
Yeah.
They're one of my most hated college rivalries on the planet, and nobody's going to come close except maybe Alabama if Mac Jones continues to play at the rate he's playing.
So Clemson versus who?
I think it's going to be your top 4 teams making it to the playoffs. As of right now, I have is Clemson, Alabama. I have Ohio State, and then probably Georgia. It's going to be it's a 2-conference race probably for that last spot. The Big 12's out. They continue to beat each other as normal and just continue to just wipe each other out of the playoff picture. The Pac-12's not going to be able to finish the season and be able to get a team in there that's not going to be good enough. It's going to come down to UGA or Notre Dame probably. I just think UGA is the better team on paper, and when it come down to the committee now, picking the teams as opposed to a computer, which used to favor Notre Dame in the past, I think UGA is just too good of a team. They already lost to Alabama. They'll play Alabama again probably in the SEC championship, and we could see them play a 3rd time in the college football playoff depending on how this goes. I think Notre Dame's big test is going to be Clemson next week, and that's going to be the benchmark for the committee for them because Notre Dame really doesn't play anybody else that big. They only beat Louisville, who was 1-4 at that time. They only beat Louisville by 5. So they're not beating the teams bad enough that they should be beating. And next week's going to be their big benchmark weekend, and we'll see how it kind of goes for them.
All right, well, my money's on the Buckeyes just because Buckeyes.
Buckeyes are a good team. We'll see how it kind of goes. But I think Clemson really hasn't had a reason to play yet.
I would have went with Michigan in the because of the cool helmets, but it sounds like they're not that very good.
Nah, Michigan, and they'll play Ohio State later in the year, and everyone will see why. And
Right.
Michigan will just be exposed. But.
So that wraps up our show for today. Thank you very much to our special guest, Matt Caputo, for stopping by and telling us about his fantastic work. So, one more time, so it's the Mustache Classic Part 2, and this is November 21st.
November 21st, Danbury, Connecticut, at.
All right, and then as always, Harris Berger, Alfonso Caldero, LDM Radio Sports Talk. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much.